Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Wow. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Jerry Robbins. And that's a bright light. And let me see. I feel like I ought to be doing profiles up here with that light. Get my little number right here. And anyway, it's good to be here. It's good to be vertical, breathing on my own, and sober again tonight. I want to welcome the newcomer that stood up and welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hope you get to stay here. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's changed my life, and it's been the best thing that I've ever known. And it's special to be at this meeting. I helped start this meeting when it started, and it was pretty cool. And to be part of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was thinking to myself a couple weeks ago, you know, I never got drunk standing in a bar doorway. You know, I had to go in to get drunk. And that's the way it is with Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, you stand at the door, you sit in the back, and you don't listen, and you don't get the message, and all of a sudden Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work. And I got a lot of people that I know that's come in and tried this deal, and they walk back out, and you know, they never gave it a chance. And that's the sad part, is a lot of people just don't stay here long enough to get the chance to see that it really works. And I've been blessed, and it's a gift, and I know that. It's a big gift, and I'm even alive, much less sober. And the biggest gift is the friends that I've got. You know, I think that's the gift. I got here, I didn't have one friend. You know, I didn't have any list of phone numbers to call when I got here. And didn't have a God, and I couldn't stop drinking, and I didn't know I was an alcoholic till I got here. And I didn't know what an alcoholic was, and thank God you let me stay long enough to find out what alcoholism is. Because I know today, even without a drink, I'm nuts. And no, I shouldn't say that. Without a drink and without a program, I'm nuts. Because see, when I'm working the steps and I'm talking to the guys I sponsor and I'm talking to my sponsor, then my life's pretty good. But when things go awry, you know, I check in with me, and like a friend of ours says, that's the wrong source to be checking into. I check in with me, and it's just not good. And I never know what I'm going to say when I come to places like this, because I think that's another honor and a privilege, is not only to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but to be asked to come somewhere and share your experience, strength, and hope, because that's all I have is my experience, strength, and hope. I was out in the Redlands last weekend, and it was like in a hospital meeting, and there was people coming in with wristbands, and some of the people didn't know what they were. And I really felt sorry for them, because, see, if they weren't alcoholic, God, I just don't know what to tell them to do. Thank God I know what I am. I'm an alcoholic, and you guys give me a solution to living today. And before I got here, see, I didn't have those. I was a schizophrenic, or a homicidal maniac, or post-war syndrome from Vietnam, and all those labels that we get out there. And come to find out, you know, I'm just a common drunk. I'm just a guy that couldn't live on a daily basis without alcohol in my system. And I didn't know that those other problems I had when I came here. Someone came in and said, I've got some, someone that was up here, I believe maybe the leader, said that, you know, she's just got some living problems or living things going on today. And I had those every day, but I didn't know how to live with them. And I still got them today, but you guys taught me how to live with them. And And it's all through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's through the steps. It's through sponsorship. In my case, it's through the history of AA. I like to think of what Bill and Bob did for me. If those guys wouldn't have done what they did back in those old days, these little groups that we've got today might not be here. Look at the Washingtonians and the Oxford groups and the people that tried some type of deal to help the drunks, and all of a sudden it went to the wayside. And Alcoholics Anonymous, thank God, since it started, has stayed. You know, and what a gift that's been for me. It's the old timers that reached out for me when I was new and said, you know, you can not just take a drink one day at a time, and we'll show you how to do that. And that's all I wanted, was just try to figure out, you know, if you just, I just didn't want to drink no more. You know, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, as they say, and I was beat up when I got here, and very lonely and full of fear. Celeste mentioned fear, you know, and the book talks about 100 forms of fear, and you know, I probably got all of them. And when they come back today, you know, the gift that I have is that they don't overwhelm me like they used to. I don't have to reach for the bottle when I get scared anymore. You know, I'll reach for the phone and I'll call somebody, or somebody will drop by the house or make a phone call to me, and what a gift that is. People sometimes call me with a problem. When I tell them what I've got going on, they don't have a problem anymore. And I do the same thing. I'll call somebody and I think I've got this major problem, and I call someone and Jesus, they've had a brother pass away, or they're thinking about drinking, which is the worst case scenario, and I'd go, holy shit. James said we were at a restaurant and that pitcher of beer went by last night and he didn't have a desire to have any of it, and I wanted it. It was it's always there. I always want to have a respect for the disease of alcoholism. I always want to have a respect for that first drink. I'll be around here when I'm 45 years sober, I hope, and I tell you what, alcohol is just waiting. It's the most patient thing I've ever known in my entire life. Still, I'd love to see me drunk. You know, Till tells me every once in a while, you can have a drink, it's all right. Hell, you've been sober for 13 years, what's that? You know? I did a 12-step call back, or not a 12-step call, I did a 9-step call back when I was back in Indiana last year. And I like to share little stories like that because it just reminds me of where I come from. And I had an old college buddy that I needed to look up. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and the last time I saw him, I had a gun on me, and I scared him to death because he didn't know what was going to go on. And I was nuts, and I was drunk. And I needed to make an amends to him and tell him, you know, I'm really sorry I scared you like that, because that's the last time he saw Jerry Robbins. And so I made a call, and his dad said he was still living with his dad, and I'm 47 and he's 47, and he says, Dad said he's down at the bar, but I'll give you the number. And I said, okay, give me the number. So I called him, and I said, Tim, I said, this is Jerry Robbins, and he said, what the, you know, are you doing? And I said, I'm at my brother's house, but I said, I thought I'd try to get a hold of you and see if we may be able to get together and talk. And he said, well, why don't you come on down and have a couple? I said, nah, Tim, I said, I don't drink anymore. And he said, he started laughing on the phone. And he said, what do you mean you don't drink anymore? And I said, I haven't had a drink in a little over 12 years. And the best answer that ever came back in my life was, he said, why? And that's all I needed to talk to him about. He's in the bar, and he's asking me why I haven't had a drink in 12 years. And probably the next best thing that he could have said was, if you haven't had one, you probably need one real bad if you haven't had one in 12 years. And I didn't get to see him, you know. I tried to make an appointment with him, and he didn't show up, and that's okay, because, you know, I understand this disease. And maybe he's got it, maybe he doesn't, but I've got it, and I'm the only one that has to do anything about my disease, and he has to do whatever he has to do with his life. But what a gift that is, was that, well, not why he came back over the phone. All of the stuff that I thought I was going to have to anticipate talking to this guy about went out the window. Because I know why I haven't had a drink, and it's you guys sitting in a room like this taking care of a guy named Jerry Robbins that was a hopeless, helpless, chronic alcoholic when he got here and didn't know what he was and didn't know what he was getting into. You know, the first meeting, and I like to talk about the first meeting because the first meeting I went to, it was a big blessing. I can't tell you what the speaker said, but he lied like I'm doing up here tonight. He lied a lot, and he was telling people stuff that I wouldn't tell from the podium ever, and so at break time, wives were hugging other husbands, and I thought that was incredible. And husbands were in the room, and that was even more incredible. And I thought, God, what's going on here, you know? And then I seen women hugging women, and that was real weird for me. But what really got me, I think, was when a man hugged a man, and I watched those two guys, because I sit over there on that side of the room from that stuff. I don't do that kind of stuff. And so, you know, they went back to the break, and then the meeting ended, and then they stood up and they started holding hands and going in a circle, and I thought, oh shit. I thought, what have I got myself into now? And I was looking around for Charlie Manson to come in or something, you know. I mean, it was like, what cult have I got myself into now, you know? They've been talking about me for a long time now, and now they're going to say I'm doing something else stupid. And I started shaking when I was, Pete and Kurt was on both sides of me, and I won't ever forget that first meeting for some reason. And Pete later became my sponsor, and he died sober of cancer, and Kurt's still one of my best friends. And one of them leaned down to me, and I started shaking, you know, and they started that Our Father prayer, and I never knew the Our Father prayer. I didn't have a God, and I didn't know what you guys were doing. And when you started that, it instantly, just that quick, says, see, one more time, you're in the wrong place. One more time, you're in a group of people that knows what's going on, and I'm the only one that's out there in left field somewhere. I have no idea what's going on. And so I started shaking, and one of them leaned down to me and said, listen, she says, you don't have to know the Lord's Prayer to stay sober. You stay here one day at a time, and we'll teach you how not to drink. And I could relax just a little bit. And they went through that prayer, and I didn't know it, you know, and thank God, though, one of them grabbed me, you know, and said, hey, you don't have to know the Lord's Prayer to stay sober. Thank God, you know, after the meeting, people came up and gave me hugs and said, you know, you don't have to leave here if you don't want to, you know. And the guy that 12-stepped me took the time out of his day to come up and come to my bed. And I was in intensive care with pancreatitis, and I'd gone through some DTs, and I don't know how the DTs lasted. I don't know how long anyway, but I never want to forget that last drunk. I never want to forget, you know, those helicopters coming through the rooms, and the dragons and the elephants, and, you know, the Hell's Angels walking down the hallway, and it's all in my mind, but these things were real when I was laying there in that bed. And I'd heard about people going insane. I'd heard about people before I got sober about the wet brain thing, but, you know, I just figured that was far from what I was ever going to do, and yet I was laying in that hospital bed, and shit was flying through the room and bouncing off the walls, and I had become what I had heard about, with no control whatsoever. I couldn't have stopped that DTs if I had prayed and done everything in my power. What was real was real. And thank God Jim Dunnigan took time out of his day to come up, you know, and came up to my bedside, and he said, you know, he says, my name's Jim Dunnigan, I'm an alcoholic, and I break his anonymity in the group. I don't tell it on the street. And he came up and he said, my name's Jim Dunnigan, I'm an alcoholic, and I've been sober 9.5 years, one day at a time, in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, what? And what's he talking about? It was all garbled to me. I'd never heard about Alcoholics Anonymous. Much less anybody stayed sober, like Tim said. Anybody stayed sober 9.5 years needed a drink. And he looked like he needed one real bad. And here he was leaning over my bed. I was dying. And he said, listen, he said, why don't you come down and detox for about 7 days? And he says, if, you know, we're not going to keep you. If you want to leave, you're free to leave, but won't you just come down and give it a try? And he said, after 7 days, if you shake it out and you feel you don't want to stay here, you know, we'll give you your misery back. And what a gift that was, you know, never to hear that. But yet somebody telling me, come on down. And I never even knew what a detox was. I never knew what DTs were. And then through a series of events, the doctor came to my bed and said, 3 things happen to people like you, you know. You die, you go insane, or you go to prison. And from what your sister tells me and what I know as a doctor, you're dying. You're definitely insane for the things you're doing out there on the street. And you're going to prison for the things you've done. And he said, I suggest you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. They even help people like you. And he's still my doctor today. And he's not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So see, within a period of 10 days, 2 people had come up. And then a couple other people probably came in the room to see me. And I went down into this detox, and happened to be a hospital program. And I never went there to be a hospital program, but if people have to pay $10,000 for a big book, I don't care what you have to pay for it. As long as when you get it, you read it and you get to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think it served a good purpose. And for me, it served a real good purpose. And thank God, you know, an insurance company that I worked for this company, but I didn't work for them. I hadn't done any work for them in a long time, and they had honored me going into that hospital program, and they took care of the tab, and thank God there was alcoholics around there that could leave this drunk through the first 30 and 90 days of his sobriety. And a guy that helped me the most in the early days was a guy named Leroy. He had 7 days, and I believed him. But like tonight, you know, you got up and took a 6-month chip, you know, and that was too far out of range for me. I had no concept of what 6 months without a drink could be. It'd be a living hell for this drunk, I know that. You know, and 30 days, people taking 30-day chips, I thought that's impossible. You know, you just don't understand. You know, you haven't heard my story, you haven't been where I've been. I've got a drink. Every place I'd ever been in my entire life for the last probably 15 years. You know, people tried to help me not to drink, but I'd never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what happened, Leroy came up and he said, "My name's Leroy," and he gave me his last name, and he said, "I'm an alcoholic and I've been sober 7 days." And he gave me my hope that I needed. He gave me hope that this drunk could get 7 days. And so we started the journey. And I got to read out that big book to Leroy, you know, and I read to him for 5 or 6 or 7 days, and I usually share this because Leroy, I think, is the reason I'm standing here today. Because I was chronic and I was hopeless, and yet this guy reached out his hand and he said, "I think I can help you." You know? He was a black guy and I was a white guy, and I never liked black guys, and I'd been to many, many jails, many institutions, and I was very prejudiced when I got here, and I'm not today, and what a gift that is, but he helped me overcome that. In about 5 or 6 days, I got tired of reading it, and I looked at him and I said, "I'm not going to read this book to you no more." I said, "It's your turn to read or forget it." And he said, "You don't understand," and he got a tear in his eye. And I still see his face when it's happening as I tell this story, because you see, I truly believe that he saved my life. He got a tear in his eye, and I got off the bed, and I thought we was going to have to fight, because I'd been in those 5 and 8 cells where we had to fight. And somebody got a tear in their eye that you're just scared, and you just have to fight. And I got off the bunk, and I said, "I've been here before, so let's do this and get it out of the way." And he said, "You don't understand." He said, "I can't read." So you see, Leroy got me reading that book right off the bat for 5 or 6 days, and then all of a sudden, we was hanging around together for a year and a half, and then Leroy wasn't making enough money in Alcoholics Anonymous and had to go make money. And he went back out there. And he came back when I was 4 or 5 years sober, and I got to take him to some more meetings in a door by his house on a Saturday morning, and all the drapes were gone, and the house was empty, and Leroy wasn't there anymore. And I haven't seen him since. So you see, I keep coming back to meetings and hope that I get to run into him. You know? Because I do. I owe that man my life. And I still owe it to him today, and I'll owe it to him till I die, and I hope I die sober. So see, if you're sitting in the room, whether you're new or old, you know, the guy sitting next to you just might be your best friend for the rest of your life, so hang on to him. I've got so many friends today, it's unbelievable, and I was just thinking to myself, you know, I never have a need today that someone in Alcoholics Anonymous can't fulfill, as long as it's not something like money and property and prestige and all that crap. But if there's some void that I've got in my life today, someone in Alcoholics Anonymous has experienced that void, and they can come forward and help me. And this is the first place I've ever been in my entire life that could fill that hole. So you see, not only have you allowed me not to drink one day at a time, but you gave me a life that I never knew I could live. I never knew a guy like me, you know, could be married. Chris and I have been together. We just celebrated 10 years of marriage, but we've been together over 12 and a half years. And man, I couldn't have a relationship when I got here with nobody. And what a gift it is to have a true friend at home, you know. And we don't fight, and we don't argue, and we don't quarrel. And we get along real good, you know. And I try to do things for her, and she tries to do things for me. And it's just another big gift. But you see, the gift came from Alcoholics Anonymous, because you taught me that I could be a good husband if I wanted to be. All I have to do is quit doing the things I used to do. And I'd go to people that were married, and I'd ask them for advice. I'd say, you know, every time I go in the bathroom, the toilet paper's upside down. Pisses me off. And you know, don't she know nothing, you know? And it's just old crap. I got 10 brothers and 4 sisters, and my brothers still live that way, you know? They're still that way at home, you know, and it drives me nuts. You know, they're just dictators at home, and they're, you know, just nothing's hardly ever right. you know. And it's not that way in my house today. And I look at my brothers and I look at my home, and what's the difference between my home and their home? We came from the same father and mother. You know what I mean? Why are they still yelling at their wives? And why are they still nitpicking the shit out of them? And yet I get to go home, and if the toilet paper's upside down, I turn it over. I never knew you could do that. I mean, what a concept, you know? Been dishes in that sink day after day and just drives me butt. And Clayton says, been dishes in there a couple of days, huh? And I said, yeah. And he said, get your ass in there and do them. And I looked at him and I thought, men don't do that stuff, you know? That's not my job. He says, whose job is it? And he got me thinking, you know, what did I do? Did I hire a wife or something? What the hell is a marriage if I'm not in it? And it's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. What the hell is Alcoholics Anonymous if I'm not in it? See, what's happening to people like me is I'll sit on the fence every once in a while. And when I'm sitting on the fence, it's real uncomfortable. And what's going to happen to people like me is the wind's going to blow the wrong way one day, and I'm going to fall outside that fence. And I'm going to wonder what happened, and I'm going to wonder, how do I find the gate to get back in? And what if there's no gate? See, that scares me. If I pick up one drink and I leave here, I might not get back. And what it does to me, see, it just brings back that past real quick. Because, see, I'm just a liar, cheat, and a thief on the inside. How did I get such a gift of friends like you? When the last call from Hawthorne Jail, the line went dead to my sister, and she said, you can rot there, you little son of a bitch, because I'm not helping you no more. And when the phone went dead, there was no more numbers. And I never want to forget that. And today when I wake up and I get those feelings, there's numbers. All I got to do is pick up the phone. And the magic sometimes is I don't have to pick up the phone because my phone rings. You know, I think, thank God for sponsorship for my life. You know, my first sponsor, and I don't like to say much about people that have to go get drunk, but my first sponsor got me to the fifth step, and we had a little turmoil going on during my fifth step, and actually during the event, and the wife come home in the middle of my fifth step and was pissed that I wasn't done yet. And one more time she shut out the door, and that old feeling came back. One more time Jerry Robbins is in a home and the wife's pissed and leaves. What have I done? What's wrong with me? How's come I can't go in a home and make it comfortable? How's come when I go in a home people's got to leave? How's come when I go in a home people don't want me around? So when she left, that hole came back. And I just looked at him and I said, what did I do? What have I done wrong here? I'm trying to spill my guts to somebody and get honest with them, and when I'm trying to do that, I'm breaking up a family, it seemed like. Like, what's the deal? So I got through the fifth step finally with him, and we got to the sixth step, and he hadn't been through the sixth and seventh, and at 12 years sober, he got drunk. And you see, I took a real hard look at that. What makes people go drink after they've been here a while? And I'm not saying what makes them go drink, but I know what will allow me to go drink is if I think I've worked the steps and I don't need them anymore. I've sponsored guys, and I know what that's like. I don't need that anymore. I had an H&I panel for 9 years out in Wayside Prison. I know what that's like. I don't need that anymore. Oh, I've been to meetings. Those meetings, they're just meetings. I don't do that anymore. And then pretty soon, you see, I convinced myself that I'm not only not an alcoholic. I just got a few problems, but I can iron that out. It'll be all right. I don't need you guys no more. I'm okay. I'm working every day, and Jesus, I'm working 70 hours a week now. I've done so good. Then pretty soon I forget about you, and then pretty soon I forget about me, and then pretty soon I forget about where I come from, and then I have to go back. So you see, if I don't stay active and I don't stay current and I don't keep doing these things that you guys taught me to do, the chances of me staying is real slim. I only know of 2 people in 13 years that quit going to meetings that are still sober. And I mean, kind of okay at home. I probably know about 5 that hasn't drank, but the other 3, I don't want nothing they've got. I seen somebody in Home Depot the other day, and we used to go to meetings together on a regular basis all the time. I haven't seen him in about 4 or 5 years in a meeting, and I won't break his anonymity, but I said, how you doing? He proceeded to tell me how he was doing. Boy, and it wasn't good. And then he proceeded to pick on his wife, what she wasn't doing at home. And then pretty soon it was goddamn this and F that and that. And then finally I looked at him and I said, hey, I said, have you been to a meeting lately? What for? And I just looked at him and I said, you're going to have to find that out. And I turned around and walked away because that's all I could tell him. What am I going to say? I can't carry a message to someone that doesn't want to hear it. Just like me, man. If I don't want Alcoholics Anonymous, all the, ABCs come back in my life. No human power could relieve me of my alcoholism. And it just can't. So I've got to rely on something greater than me and something greater than you. And that came through the steps, and I found the God here. And that's where sponsorship really came in heavy, because Clayton, when Pete died, Clayton became my sponsor when I was about 2.5 years sober. And he's still my sponsor today. And he must have read that book to me every Saturday morning for 7 years over at his house across the kitchen table. 7 years just giving it to me, giving me everything he had. No charge. He never charged me to go in his door. He never sent me a bill. I just go there and he'd make me be there at 7. He wouldn't let me be 3 after, and he would let me be 3 till. At 3 till, he'd open the door and call me by my first name. He'd say, what are you doing, asshole? It's not 7 o'clock. And he'd slam the door. And I'd get there at 5 after 7, and he'd say, what are you doing, asshole? It's 5 after 7. You're not interested, or you don't want this thing. And he'd slam the door, and I'd have to leave. He wouldn't open it back up. And you see, that's the kind of discipline I needed in my life, because I'd run the show all my life. I needed somebody that'd do that to me. And what he taught me was 7 o'clock means 7 o'clock. I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I do have responsibilities. My responsibilities, thank God, in the olden days, not the old days, but when I first got sober, was I was allowed to mop floors and clean ashtrays, and I didn't, I'd wash the coffee pots, and I don't drink coffee and I don't smoke, and I didn't figure that out. But what it really did get me to do was it got me into service, and it got me to be saying, okay, I have done something for Alcoholics Anonymous today. In one way or another, each of us have done something for ourselves today through helping somebody else. And that's my prayers in the morning. I ask God, I said, please let me be of service today, God. Whether it's to some member of Alcoholics Anonymous or whether it's somebody else out there. Let me be a worker among workers, not the owner or the boss. Just let me help somebody today. And I can honestly tell you, when I get in that frame of mind, and when I honestly help somebody with no expectations on that side, I come back a better man. So anyway, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just kind of here. But what I do know is I'm a changed man from what I used to be. I was working on a job yesterday, and my mother-in-law brought a nephew that's 9 years old over to the job site and dropped him off and let me have him for 4 hours. And see, coming from where I come from, my brothers didn't allow their nephews or nieces to be around me. And here I got to have him for 4 hours working saws and pounding nails and just doing the things that I do. And what a gift it is. And that's all he could talk about last night, was how he don't even want to go to school now. He just wants to work for Uncle Jerry. He's never seen me take a drink. And if he sees me take one drink, he won't have to worry about working for Uncle Jerry, because I don't know how to work when I drink. I don't know how to do the things when I'm drinking that I do today. I don't know how to be a husband, and I don't know how to be a person out there on the street. I'm just a maniac. But I didn't get well overnight, I want to remember some of the things that's happened to me in sobriety too. And like I was about 2 years sober, and I found myself chasing a guy with a crowbar on PCH. And I hadn't had a drink in almost 2 years, or a little over 2 years, and I got to stop and take a look at that. And I'm supposed to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. My life is supposed to be changing, and I haven't had a drink, and yet I'm totally crazy. And what's the deal there? And what I got to do was, I got to really take a hard look around me at that time, and then I got to go call my sponsor and say, something's, or I didn't even have a sponsor. Fred Ellis called me to meeting, and he said, who's your sponsor? And I said, I was in between sponsors. I said, well, I don't have a sponsor. And that's when Pete died, right before I got Clayton, and I was nuts. And Fred looked me straight in the eye, and he says, you got a damn fool for a sponsor, don't you? And that's all he had to say. I called Clayton right away, because I didn't want to live that life no more. I hadn't had a drink, and yet I was just as nuts as if I were drunk. And that's why I think they mean, alcohol is but a symptom. What happens? Well, I'm not saying we can't get nuts around here, but what I can say is I'm real uncomfortable when I get that way. And when I get that way, I know that I've got to do something about it or else I'm going to have to drink, because the guilt of that stuff will come back. So, I don't know. I was thinking tonight, as I was putting on these clothes, like they're my clothes. What a freedom that really is. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't own shit. I didn't own nothing. The car wasn't mine. The clothes I got from Illinois, and an old man owned a clothing store, and he let me buy a whole bunch of clothes. He let me buy them. Now, buying them and paying for them is two different things. He let me have all these clothes. And I went back to make my amends for that old guy, and he passed away, and the clothing store wasn't there anymore. But I want to tell you, when I got here, I didn't have nothing that was mine. And so today, it's like someone complimented on my shirt, and I said, yeah, Chrissy bought this for me. It's pretty cool. And even I didn't buy it. See, it came from one of you guys. It came from another alcoholic. What a gift I've truly enjoyed was, I go into a car dealership, and a friend of mine walks out the door, and he's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I go buy my materials at the lumber yard, and some people in the yard and some people inside are members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Every time I turn around, I've got friends in just all areas of my life. And I never had those types of friends before. I never had a way out except through in the bottle. And then that just escaped me somewhere along the line. I'm not saying the bottle whipped me, but I needed this program when I was 14 years old. I went to my first juvenile detention center when I was 13. And the disease just grabbed me that quick. And I was off and running. The life that I took was, I thought my brothers were bad with their drinking, and my dad was bad with his drinking, and man, after I was probably 21 or 22, I was doing more things than they could ever think of doing. And it was like, what's wrong with Jerry? What's wrong? Why don't you have a little wine? Why don't you stay off of that shit, is what they used to tell me. I'd go, they don't understand. I heard about a friend of mine the other day that was just getting the first job. He'd been looking for a job for a year and a half. And he'd been in and out of AA. He'd get 3 or 4 weeks, and then he'd go get drunk. And 3 or 4 weeks, and he'd go get drunk. And he had the job. All he had to do was show up the first day at work. And the night before, he got drunk. And he couldn't make it to his first day on the job. And I'm really glad I got to hear that, because that's me. When anything important is supposed to take place, man, I just have to have that drink to get geared up for it, and then all of a sudden the drink takes me and I'm gone. Hell, I forget why I even took the drink. I took the drink to make myself happy to get ready for this occasion, and all of a sudden I took the drink and I'm gone. And this happened to this person, and I thought, man, one more time I get to hear about me out there if I pick up one drink. And this meeting, for instance, has been real special for me. Just the people on the committee when we first started as a steering committee, what a gift it was that we could go over and meet in the living room and sit down and discuss, what do you think here and what do you think there? How could we have the format? How could we do this? How could we do that? And just to have considered me to come and have a little bit of input in that was an honor. I let little things be honors to me today, just little gifts. This lady that I'm working on her house right now, her husband quit going to meetings about 3 years ago. And he got sober. I took him to his first meeting, and he has 2 months of sobriety on me, and he hadn't drank. And I just feel for him, man. And what he did is he quit going to meetings and he went to work. And he works like 70 hours a week. And tonight I talked to him on the phone, and I said, why don't you get out of the office and come home? And he started chuckling. And I said, I mean it. I said, I've been at your house at 7 every morning for 3 weeks. And I said, you've been gone, and some nights I haven't left till 6 or 6:30, and you ain't home yet. I said, I only live a block away, which is, a block and a half away, which is good. But, you got a 45-minute commute. And see, what happened was the meetings and the work just changed place. And what really scares me is How long does it take for an alcoholic that's been to Alcoholics Anonymous go without meetings before all of a sudden work becomes a priority and sobriety loses its priority, and then all of a sudden the drink takes the drink, and then the drink takes the man? And see, I don't know what to say to him sometimes. I want to say, come on, why don't you go to a meeting? But I've talked to him once before about it. And it was like, I'm doing okay. And my next words to him when he says that is, how long are you going to be doing okay? I wasn't doing okay when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I tell you what, I hope I always remember that part. I hope I remember the part that man, I just would not be anywhere like I am today in my own skin. I'm talking about just being comfortable with me, and not that I'm bragging or anything about, Chris and I share a home with my mother-in-law, so it's not like, I've gained all kinds of prosperity and all that crap. But what a gift it is. We've lived with her now for probably 5 or 6 years, and I haven't had an argument with that lady in 5 or 6 years. I see her every morning, and I see her every night. And we haven't exchanged any harsh words to one another. That's not the same person that came to you people. I couldn't get along with anybody when I got here. So through the book and through the steps and through the history of AA, you guys have shown me a way of life that I can't pay it back. I can't give you back what I've got inside of me. I found a God that I like to talk about today, and He's mine. And I found my God I talked to the group for about 2 years. And through my illness, I was in the hospital like 40 times, and you people have come to see me and brought me meetings beside my bed, and I appreciate that. And I don't think I'd be standing here if it wasn't for that. And I think it's truly amazing, that the gift of the Spirit that I have today, with a God that I understand, came from drunks that brought it to me, that were sober, and they'd share with me something that they had done that was spiritual. I like to think of my God today as someone that really wants me to be okay. And I don't mean be okay by the car I drive and the clothes I wear. I mean be okay on the inside, where I get up and shave in the morning and I don't have to worry about what I did yesterday or the night before. I'm talking about a person that can get up in the morning and fulfill the day by saying, please God, just let me be a service. Help me not to drink today and help me be a service. I wake up in the morning and I read 60 to 63 and 86, 87, and 88, and that's my memory of a morning. That's just the way that I do things. And what happens for me, it says we constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. And I don't know about you, but when I get out of bed, I'm running the world every morning. Every morning my head is off. Chrissy says sometimes it wakes up at 3 o'clock. She hears it humming. And when I open my eyes, and it's still this way today. When I open my eyes, I'm either late or I'm early. I should have went to bed later. I should have went to bed earlier. If the dogs wouldn't have barked, I'd have slept better. All those excuses, my head's just running that quick as soon as I get up in the morning. And the only way I get to arrest that is to go in and sit down and get quiet. And my meditation isn't an hour long. My meditation is sometimes 3 to 7, 8, 10 minutes. But I tell you what, when I don't do that, and I go off to work and I get too busy out there and I don't do what I need to be doing for me, I get squirrely through the day, and then I'm short with somebody, and then they're not driving right, and I get out of my car and get in their car, and it's no fun. Every time I get out of my truck and get in somebody else's car, it's just not fun. We're arguing. We're arguing when I leave my truck to get in there. It just, things at work aren't right, or things they just, somehow step in front of me at the store, and God, I just, don't these people understand? And then all of a sudden, the very next day after I forgot to do this that day, the very next day I'll get up and read 86, 87, and 88. I'll do prayers and I'll meditate a little bit. And I'll get up and a person cuts in front of me, or a person gets in line, and I'll go, and they must be in a hurry. And I'll go, where was that yesterday when I wanted to rip that guy's head off? Where was it yesterday when I was chasing that guy down 190th, using the wrong finger to give him directions with? But that's the disease of alcoholism for me. When I'm uncomfortable, that drink is calling me. It's just saying, man, you need a drink, just like Tim said. Why don't you just go get that drink? And it's amazing, I think I know what the first drink will do to me. And what really scares me is picking up the drink and living. I think a lot of people that pick up the drink and they die, they kind of really get the gift. They might not die sober, but they get the gift of not living that living hell that we know about. That living hell, if I pick up a drink, I'm afraid I'll just stay out there. You know, and I don't care how long it's going to be. It won't take me long to get back to be just as nuts as I was before. Because see, that's from being here long enough watching people go do that. And they come back in a week. In 1 week of drunkenness, they come back. And they'll say, Jesus Christ, you know, you wouldn't believe what happened. You know? I had a guy who was out 6 weeks one time and they repossessed his car. His wife left with 2 kids. The dog was growling at him. You know what I mean? And when I hear that, I go, man, I better take a listen. 6 weeks. And see, I don't know what frame I have. You know, I don't know if I'm going to be okay with a drink for a week. I don't know if I'm going to be okay with a drink for a couple years. I don't know if I'm going to be okay without any meetings or Alcoholics Anonymous for 10 years. You know, one of the guys that I got sober with hadn't been to a meeting in 10 years. Quit going in his 3rd year. And the last time I talked with him, he wanted to borrow my golf card to play in a tournament, to win a tournament, to go to Tahiti. And I told him, no, I can't do that. That's cheating. I can't do it. He said, what's wrong with you? And I looked at him and I said, look, don't you see? I give you the card, somebody else uses that card. That's lying, cheating, and stealing no matter how you look at it, whether you're drinking or not. And no, you can't use my card. And the guy just looked at me and kind of laughed and turned around and walked away. And we had been real good friends up to 10 years. And I haven't talked to him since that day. And what's the difference between him and I? Is it the golf card, really? Is it really me not giving him the golf card? No, it's not. It's leaving Alcoholics Anonymous and becoming that old person without any alcohol and then wondering what the hell's happening in my life. I don't want to leave here, you know, and you guys have given me this gift, and I truly appreciate it. Thanks for having me tonight. Thanks, George.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And what that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.